Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening to this. I'm Lucy Morris, and welcome to another episode of theflyingarcher.com. We have an amazing guest for you today, Ruth Rowe. Hey, Ruth.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
That's okay. Well, Ruth is a coach and a retired competitor. She's a level 4 NTS archery coach. Ruth is the head coach at the Bull Run Shooting Center in Washington, D.C. And she's also the national coach for the Virgin Islands since 2012. And Ruth has published several books and videos on archery. Ruth has been named Sportswoman of the Year by the U.S. Olympic Committee several times. Ruth is an Olympian and an international champion who has represented the United States in 8 World Championships, 2 Pan American Games, the 1984 Olympic Games, and many other international competitions. Placing second in a national championship in 1970, she continued to place in the top 10 nationally throughout her competition career until retiring in 2003 from competing. She has been ranked as high as 7th in the world in 1977 and 17th in the world in 1998. And during her time as a competitor, she has set some records. So we have a lot to discuss, and please welcome from Washington, D.C., Ruth Rowe.
Well, hello.
Hey, Ruth. I just gave a brief overview and bio. And Ruth, sit back, relax, take a minute or two, and just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into archery.
Oh, my background, college graduate, majored in biology, took archery as phys ed in college, and I liked it and just kept going, and, well, that's just what happened.
And that happens to a lot of people, and Ruth and I are going to sit back and talk about archery for about 20 minutes. If you're listening while you're driving your car, I'll take all the notes for you, and I'll have the links and resources on my blog at theflyingarcher.com. Let's just start with, what kind of bow do you like?
Well, bow type. I started as a recurve because when I began shooting, compounds were not even on the market. And I stayed with recurve even after the compound was there because compounds were not in the Olympic Games, and archery came into the games before the compound was on the market. No reason for me to change.
Well, that makes sense. And well, since you're really a recurve shooter and have been, and you coach and teach archery, is there a particular gadget that you like to recommend to your students, or that you may have liked at one point when you were competing?
Not particularly. I'm not sure what you mean by gadget, but excuse me, there are pieces of equipment that I will, brands and models that I will prefer over others, but as far as setting up a bow and the pieces on it, it's pretty much a standard setup.
Okay, so is there a particular equipment setup that you like better than something else?
Well, I like to see my students when they're first getting their own equipment. I guess the biggest thing is they start with a single rod stabilizer simply because it's a little lighter. Mm-hmm. And a little later on, when they're adjusted to their equipment and they're shooting real smooth, we do go to V-bars. But that's about the only difference there as far as equipment is concerned.
Do you immediately put sights on their bows and stuff?
Well, the archery program, which is the program I have here in this area, teaches all 3 styles of shooting, compound, recurve, traditional. Mm-hmm. So the equipment they get is related to the style of shooting that they prefer.
Oh, okay.
And I don't have any particular preference on style that whatever they really want to do, then I can teach them, get them started. and help them move into the group of archers that they would prefer being with.
There's a philosophy which I hear different coaches talk about. Some say, I will start a brand new student with a sight, and because that's how it should be. And other coaches are like, I will start them without a sight because I want to teach form first. If the sight can break and, how to shoot without a sight. What's your thought on that for, a beginner?
Well, I can see both sides. I always figure it's easier to learn something correctly the first time than it is to learn something and then unlearn and relearn something else. So those that want to teach with a sight to begin with, if you can do it without too much hassle, certainly. For those that want the kids to initially have more fun than learn, then you can start them without a sight, basically bare bow technique, and then change them later if they hang around enough to do it. That's just two different ways of looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to work with teaching what they will be using, which is with a sight to begin with.
Oh, okay.
If you spend enough time, working with a kid or working with an adult and making sure they're doing it correctly as they're right there as they're learning, it isn't that much of a hassle.
Mm-hmm. Now, in your competition days,
that was a long time ago, yeah.
Yeah, but let me tell you, you sent me your archery resume, and I'm like, you didn't just go to one little tournament. You've traveled many places, been around the world, seen many things, and I'm sure you had a sort of a very interesting weather day at one point.
Oh, different places, yes.
Do you want to share with us crazy?
Oh, there's a number that come to mind. Geez. I don't know what is the worst. But there was one time when the USOC was doing the Olympic Festival, which was a kind of games within the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
We shot all day when the temperature got no higher than 60 degrees, and it was just a good, solid rain.
Oh,
luckily for us, yeah, it was great fun. We were at the Air Force Academy, so the Academy people routed out the freshmen, I don't know what they call them, but the freshman guys, and they put up one of these huge military tents and a couple of kerosene heaters, so it wasn't as bad as it might have been, but it was still pretty miserable. Another one, let's see, again in Colorado Springs, different Olympic festival. The wind was blowing so hard left to right that I had to aim off the target, come through the clicker, let the wind push to the edge of the target, try to make a clean shot and hope it hit.
Whoa.
And I asked one of the other competitors, who was known for her bluntness, and how well she was doing, and she said, well, I'm on plan B. You know what plan C is? Pack up and go home. Oh, I guess on a third one was miserable. This was in September in Ohio, where the weather is usually pretty good, but this particular year, there was a cold front that came through Friday night or Saturday night into Sunday, and I had watched the weather and I was prepared for it. Because when you went outside, it went to the field. There were about 80 targets in a row, this huge open field, and it was literally white with frost. It looked like snow. And
wow.
Like I said, I knew it was coming. I brought everything I could bring and was wearing everything I could bring. There were people there from Phoenix that had never looked at the weather, and they were out there in their little short white shorts, nothing more. We kind of bought out, I don't know whether it was Kmart, Walmart, whatever the nearby store was. So,
was that the time when everyone had to wear white?
It was beginning to change a little bit. That white was trim, but you basically white at that time, yes.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't there, but in 1973, the World Championship was in France, where they had, again, solid rain. That time, women were supposed to wear white skirts, so it was rainy, it was cold, and women were wearing full-length white skirts in the rain, in the mud.
Oh, my God.
Yep. That rule got changed. know.
It makes sense. In the summer it's good to wear white, but I find
so
it makes
gorgeous
it cooler.
To see. It's cooler, but when you go into a big open field, green grass, all targets all in a row, the beautiful color of the targets, and everybody is in white, it is just such a gorgeous picture. But it's not really practical, particularly with kids.
Yeah. What strategies do you hope with because you coach now and you've got a lot of experience. So how do you help your students understand how to take care of an issue if they have an equipment failure during a competition?
Well, I try to be there at the important competitions, and I can help. I try to prepare them as much as possible to be able to handle situations. But when I'm teaching, I put more emphasis on the shooting technique and how they're doing with that. And maybe I should be doing more on the equipment. But it's, I make sure they have what they need. Yeah. And at the major competitions, I am available there.
Well, have you had any real sort of significant equipment failures during any of your? I think you did like 100 competitions or something. I mean, huge.
I have no idea how many competitions I've done. Yes, so you're asking about me. Have I had?
Yeah.
No. I never had one. It was. This was before. Most of my competition was before the elimination things, which is a whole different situation.
Yeah.
But I never had any time when, I had to call an equipment failure, maybe at the national, but not internationally.
Mm-hmm. What books have you written, and do you have any books you're writing right now?
I've written 2 editions of Fundamentals of Recurve Archery. Mm-hmm. Bob Romero and I wrote Fundamentals of Compound. I have my 2nd edition of Maintenance, Simple Maintenance for Archery, which is useful to those that want to try to maintain their own equipment. I did 2 videos back in the 90s, the early 90s, which are still being sold. I'm amazed that people still want them, but they do.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you have a book that you're in the middle of writing right now or thinking about?
Not really. I have been kind of at a crossroads with what I want to do with book writing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have anything right at the moment that I'm working on or looking to do per se.
Well, you're kind of busy with.
Yeah, that's the other part of it. I'm kind of busy between teaching here. I teach and coach in the D.C. area,
mm-hmm.
and then being national coach of the Virgin Islands. It tends to take up a little more time. So, yeah, I haven't exactly had a lot of time just to sit and devote to writing.
What's it like being national coach for the Virgin Islands?
Pardon?
What's it like being the national coach for the Virgin Islands? What projects do you have going on?
Well, the Virgin Islands right now is just beginning with everything in archery. They have not had a structured archery program at all. They have no way to develop archers and bring them along into world archery type competition.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I've been doing, was getting all the groundwork laid so that we could do that, and we're right at that point now that actually having a structured program, that it's a way that archers can come in and progress and hopefully move on to the Virgin Islands national team and get into international competition.
Which you're using the U.S. national form, the NTS method for that.
Since I do not live there right now, I literally cannot afford to move there.
Mm-hmm.
Not at the beginning, but our national development team and the national team will be expected to know NTS, yes.
Okay. For those of our listeners who may be new to archery, and can you tell us a little bit about what the NTS is?
The NTS method of shooting was developed by the U.S. national coach, Kesey Glee. And it's a little different style of shooting than most people have seen. And I don't know whether to go into all the details of it, but it has two parts. One is to help the archers shoot to their ultimate capacity and ability. And two, there's emphasis also on helping to prevent injury, which is something that Coach Lee had seen a lot before. And so he had a real strong, he had to retire from competition because of an injury also.
It's, the national training system is biomechanically more correct for your body than I believe other systems that are out there.
Yeah, the big thing about it is it helps align the bones, so the draw weight is held more on the bones than just muscle. If you don't have a good alignment, then you're using a lot of muscle to hold the weight instead of letting the bones carry it. Just like you do when you stand, when your legs are straight.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to stand than if you have your legs bent like a skier going downhill. Now, a skier wants that, but we generally don't want that much work when we're just standing.
That's a great analogy. I love that. Thank you.
And that's what when I teach it, the first thing I teach is Bend your knees. How much effort does it take you to stand? A lot more than when your legs are straight, right? That's the whole idea.
Well, you've seen a lot, because where have you been as a competitor?
As a competitor, geez. I've been on every continent except Africa because they were not holding international level competitions when I was competing. Farthest away, Canberra, Australia.
Oh, wow.
Also, I was at a world field in I can't think of the name of the city, but it was in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Mexico any number of times now as national coach and working with the present national team, which are more adults competing than youth, but we've been going south a lot here. Guatemala, Venezuela, Colombia, Argentina, Chile, Puerto Rico, all those kind of places too.
Oh, nice. Nice places to go when it's cooler out.
Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't.
When you go with athletes, do you take time to explore the culture a little bit?
I would like to, but in general, that just takes extra money. And the teams are self-funding, meaning that the competitors are paying their own way. The federation is new enough; it doesn't have the resources at the moment to pay like they do in the U.S.
Oh, I understand. Then, do you also, have you found, competing and working with other competitors as a coach, nutrition being an impact on people's foods? Because you know how all those, when you go to competition, you got the vendors with the really nice greasy foods and stuff.
In general, nutrition makes a difference, no matter what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's fueling your body. If you are being a true athlete and training as in a regular training schedule for high performance, it becomes very important. So the types of foods, sometimes even when you eat. The biggest thing is that when you're out there on the field competing, you want to try to anticipate when you are going to be, about when you are usually get hungry after the last time you've eaten, and begin eating about a half an hour ahead so that you don't have a gap in your energy.
What foods would you recommend for someone at that point?
Well, I'm practical with that. It's stuff you can handle easily while you are shooting. Things like grapes, raisins, nuts. Those are all good fuel. But something you can easily handle, eat, and continue shooting without a hassle to clean your hands, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and you could actually have most of those items actually in your pocket right there, so you don't have to reach down to a cooler.
You can, or if you have other types of foods, even if you're shooting a double line, meaning one line shoots, another line shoots, then you go down to score, so you have a little break there. Even something like cheese.
Like what?
Cheese.
Cheese?
Yeah. You may have to clean your hands a little bit,
Yeah.
That's why that would be one that would be when you have a little break so that you can make sure your hands are clean and ready to shoot when the time comes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Your fingers just got to slip off. Oops.
Well, then you get the oil from the cheese into your tab, etc. Or your on your bow hand, it does. It shouldn't make that much difference because your fingers would be handling the food and not the part that's in contact with the bow.
What about food?
Generally, pardon?
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I didn't. Go ahead. I lost it.
Okay. What about foods to eat for dinner the night before a pretty intense shooting activity?
I would say for most people, other than the top tier competitors, don't change your diet. Eat what you normally eat. Hopefully it's good food. Eat what you normally eat.
We live in the United States. You think most people eat good food?
Hopefully there's more than what most people think. But don't stuff yourself, and don't cheat yourself either. In general, a general rule, it's better to eat smaller meals more often than it is to eat a whole big meal. So I would say just maintain your eating schedule. And you got to be careful, particularly at some of the indoor tournaments, that they schedule the line to start at a time that is convenient for what they need to be doing in the hall, not necessarily what's really good for the archers. Like for the national indoor here, they start a line at 12 o'clock. Well, that's good because that's what works for getting the number of lines in the range. But most people eat, 11:30 to 1:30. And so you have to eat early and then kind of monitor what you're doing. Because that can throw you off a little bit. And kids in particular, don't think about needing to eat. And sometimes you can just watch a kid just fall, just as the cyclists say, bonk.
Say that again. You say, sometimes you watch a kid.
As the cyclists would put it, bonk. They just hit a wall, and boom, their performance just dies. Yeah. And some of that is from not eating. Yep. They're wound up. They're intense on what they're doing. They're not paying attention to what their body needs.
I'll see that in a class that's right after school, and the kid is, their performance is horrible. And I'm like, so what did you eat today? And they look at me and because they're complaining about the performance. I'm like, well, think of, all right, so if you didn't eat anything today or just very little, try that. That's why your performance is the way it is. It's nothing else. Eat, bring snacks with you to school next time that you have archery, and it'll come together. And he's like, oh, okay. And it did.
Exactly. It's, kids are not as aware in general.
No.
So, and the other part is that they'll come straight from school to the range wearing their school clothes, and it may not work for shooting.
Well,
that happens not infrequently.
You have that happen a lot in your area?
Not a lot, but I just had it happen the other day. The kid wasn't thinking. They came straight from school. And he had on a shirt. And, of course, the collar and there was a button chest pocket and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't work well with shooting.
Oh, I had somebody that was shooting, and he, in his breast pocket, shooting right-handed, and he had a pen in his pocket. Well, he learned quite quick after the ink strips through his shirt to not put pens in his pocket when he's shooting.
Yeah.
Well, hey, there you go, listeners. I just took half a page of notes, and I have those notes at theflyingarcher.com. And you can get more information about Ruth on her website. Ruth is at thearcheryprogram.net. And
3 words,
yes. Yes, 3 words there. The Archery Program. To check out the materials that Ruth has created, as well as equipment that she has, you can go to the quintessentialarchery.com. I will also have that website on my blog. And, well...
Can I put in something there for those people that are coaching? One of the things, my goal with the Quintessential site is that I have the printed materials, but I also have specialty items that other shops, etc., may not carry because they don't sell fast enough to suit them. The big one that I think is of importance to people starting out is I have ultralight limbs, 10-pound limbs for bolt risers, anything that takes a Polaris limb. You can get limbs that are 10 pounds for your beginning archers or your young kids.
So why would you use 10-pound limbs? I mean, they all come into our place and go, I am Mr. Gruff. I can pull back the 40-pound bows. So tell me about it.
The biggest thing is that if you want to learn technique, if all you're doing is trying to hold the string back, there's no way to learn proper technique. An archer can keep working and working until they're strong enough, and then they have developed strength in some areas of their body, which the coach doesn't particularly want to be working for a really good shot. And so they have to, again, unlearn and relearn. So the ultralight limbs allow the person to, particularly kids, and a lot of kids in a lot older age bracket than most people might think, because people tend to be rather inactive these days. But it allows them to learn proper technique and feel what they're doing, get their shot together, and then you can work the weight up from there so that they have a good, solid shot.
And to let everyone know that this advice about shooting and learning form with lightweight bows is coming from an extremely experienced person in the archery field who's competed around the world and who's been coaching for years. And so if you ever have any questions about that, you can, just let us know about it. You can contact Ruth directly, or one of my people can contact me, or any of your coaches. I've seen people come to me from other programs injured because they tried a bow that was too heavy. And I'll just quickly add, if you want to get really good at archery, you just want to get the form down and be good and have fun, then, and well, let me just add, let's say you want to go hunting next fall. Well, make it like a plan that start out to learn the form correctly, start with the lightweight bows, because you only have one shot if you're going to go hunting. And then go to the gym, create a plan so you build up those muscles. You wouldn't go to the gym and, weight lift 50 pounds when you can only do 20. So it's just interesting because if you hunt, you need to have a higher poundage bow, and if you want to shoot longer distance, you do eventually need to have a higher poundage bow. But
absolutely, but not at the beginning.
No, not at the beginning.
Yeah, it's hard enough to learn technique if you are interested in serious competition.
Mm-hmm.
So my thought is don't double handicap yourself. The other one that happens too, if you have a bow that's really too heavy, compound bow. A lot of the beginning archers, not knowing any better, will kind of point the bow up and try to pull down, which puts the arrow into the air.
Mm-hmm.
And if their finger is on the trigger, it may be launched. We have any number of holes we have a public range here, and we have any number of holes in the ceiling because somebody is struggling to pull back a bow that's too heavy and has that bow pointed upward with their finger on the trigger. When you are pulling with your arm and hand trying to get the string back, your hand will automatically tighten a little, and that tightening will set off the trigger. And boom, there it goes right in the ceiling. And who knows if you're outside.
Ooh.
I swear.
I had a kid ask me, so how far can this bow go?
Yep.
15 pounds. And I'm like, pretty far, and if you have something like an adult that's struggling back with something and they let go, ooh.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know a compound can send an arrow 350 yards easy.
Ooh, yeah.
That's easy. I don't know how much farther. But yes, it can send it quite a ways.
And I've had other coaches tell me through these interviews that it's good to get a qualified coach if you're going to learn archery. Do you agree with that? To hire a coach?
I would say yes. Check out the coach's credentials and if whatever information you can find on the person before you commit. But having somebody knowledgeable to help you
mm-hmm.
is a huge benefit. You're not stuck learning on your own. When I was shooting, there were no coaches. Everything was self-taught. You watched the other people. You tried to figure out what they were doing. You watched them like a hawk, and of course, they weren't telling you. And if you were lucky, you had things work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite different now. We do have certified coaches, and we have some very excellent certified coaches. And there are some that are certified. They're not as good as others, but that's true. That's true in any situation. So I would just say, just check out the person before you, commit to coaching. They're coaching you. But yeah, certainly try to get help. Why reinvent the wheel, or why try to reinvent the wheel? The purpose of a coach to me is to shortcut the learning process.
Mm-hmm.
So why not?
So as a coach, how do you help teach your archers to stay in the moment when there are distractions? Because there's always distractions everywhere.
Well, that's part of the challenge of archery in particular and life in general these days.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do it?
Yeah. Do you have what do you say to your students, or do you have a particular way of teaching it to them?
My big thing is learn your shot routine. Learn what you do to do a shot. Keep that in your mind at all times. People, there's two reasons for that. One, that is one of the best ways to stay in the moment. Because if you're only paying attention to what you are doing and making sure you're doing your shot routine, then you have a much better chance of success. The other part, which is to me just as important, is that a lot of times when I have somebody who's been shooting for a while, that they want to take a lesson or some lessons to find out what they're doing wrong so they can improve. And whenever they say, I want to find out, I want to take a lesson because I want to learn, I want to find out what I'm doing wrong, and I stop them right there and say, why? Why do you want to figure out what you're doing wrong instead of learning what you need to do it right? And stay focused on that. That's how you stay in the moment.
And I believe to add to that is that our mind can only think one thought at a time. So if you're just thinking form, something happens around you, you go, oh, Coach Ruth said think form. Okay, what's the next thing? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Finish what you're saying.
Oh, no, continue.
That it isn't just think form.
Mm-hmm.
How, think through your complete shot routine before you shoot.
So you're saying visualize it before you pick up the bow?
Or before every arrow. Stop. You take an arrow, put it on the string,
mm-hmm.
and for me, I got my hand set and basically my body set. Then I stopped, and this is before we talked about visualization and all of that. I just stopped, looked up at the target, and basically cleared my mind. That I wasn't thinking about anything in particular, that any thought I had about what I need to do for the next shot I had done before I knocked the arrow, because I was assessing how I'd done the previous shot, and so I wanted to make sure that it was good. But it's always good to clear your mind somewhere before you raise the bow up to shooting position so that you can constantly be reinforcing what you want to do on the shot, what you need to do to have a good shot. So it's as much mental as it is physical. You need to be aware of what you are doing. As you are doing it, it's a feel thing. You got to feel what your body's doing and learn what that feel is, and then try to repeat it.
So you're basically not visualizing where you want the arrow to hit.
No, not at all. Because consider with archery, you pick up your bow, you pick up the arrow, you shoot the arrow hits the target. One is the cause and one is the effect. One is the cause, one is the result. If you are thinking about where you want it to hit in the target, you're thinking of the result. What made that result? That was what you're doing on the line with what you're doing with your body. That's where the success comes from.
So if the result ends up being a newbie hits the white, the outer ring, or they hit the grass, and that frustrates them, what advice would you give them?
As a coach, if I was there at a tournament or even in a practice session, I would say, don't worry about it. Think about your shot routine. Think about how you do your shot. If you do everything correctly, there's no room for the arrow to go someplace else. It will be where you want it. I've took 8 years off between 1985 and 1993. In the meantime, the Koreans came onto the scene, and as we know, they've been dominating world archery ever since, particularly the women. And as I had decided to come back into shooting, I was looking at, everybody's trying to figure out what are they doing that's so special? What makes them that much better than the rest of us? And one of the things that we had a lot of discussion about on the national team was the, for lack of a better term, the mystique of the Asian mental game. They had something special mental. They were doing special mental things. I was watching these archers.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, I got to thinking, I don't think there's anything special about the mental game they're doing. I think they're just so far into what they are doing and staying there in the moment with their shot that nothing else matters. And if you do that, then you can stay there and you can be successful because that is what you're doing. Humans in general, and they're saying it's worse now than it was before, we tend to either mentally be in the future or be in the past. We very rarely are right where we are with what we are doing in our body. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that is almost required if you're going to be successful in archery.
And that particular skill set actually transfers into life where you can be more in the moment focused with things that you're doing. So it's very transferable too.
Yeah, they call it mindfulness now too.
Mindfulness? Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's some of it, yeah. It's just being 100% with what you do. Little exercise. All of us play with the computer. Do things or play games on the computer. Kids do too, or on other devices. Sometimes just deliberately think about how your fingers are moving when you're typing on a keyboard or whatever you're doing on the device. Think about how your fingers are moving. What does it feel like? That's staying in the moment. Because you're feeling what you're doing as you're doing it.
Wow. Ruth, the time has just flown by. And you've been an awesome guest. I would like to give you the last word. Could you leave us with a pearl of wisdom or inspiration for us?
Ooh, That's heavy. Oh, I don't know. I think one of the most important things about archery, and I think sports in general, be it any sport, that you learn lessons to perform well in competition. Those lessons are life lessons. It isn't just about the sport. It's about learning a skill that applies to everything in the rest of your life. The thing about mindfulness, this is what I say to people, that a lot of us have a little conversation going on the side of our head while we're doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
If you stay in the moment, that little voice just disappears. It's no longer there.
Wow. Ruth, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. I don't know, Pearl of Wisdom, I guess that one. Stay with where you're at and see that little voice just disappear. Takes a while. It's not immediate.
Mm-hmm.
But it can.
It's a very powerful thing to do. Not just with archery, but of course things correlate to everything that we do.
Mhm. It does.
And well, all of our links, the websites, and any of the resources from this podcast will be posted on our websites on theflyingarcher.com.